All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022, and you are now watching Permission to Exist. I am your host, Permission to Exist, also known as PTE, and it has been a little while since we got together last, but it's good to see you all. Hello, Always Love. Hi, Nancy, and hi, everyone else who is filling into the chat. Good to see you guys. Hey, Red. We've got ourselves a very interesting show tonight, you guys, and I'm very excited to bring it to you. Before I do, I want to make sure that I give a big shout out to everyone who supports the channel, be that via Patreon, CashApp, Super Chatting, Super Thanksing, liking, commenting, and subscribing on the videos. And I am preparing to turn channel memberships on. So be on the lookout for that. I put it off for a very long time, but I am going to go ahead and turn those on probably within the next 2 weeks or so. So you guys can look out for that. And I do have exclusive content that I'm working on for the channel members. So be on the lookout for that. YouTube finally twisted my arm behind my back regarding these memberships. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. But I do want to thank everyone who has been supporting the channel in any way. It really means so much to me, and it is very, 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 very helpful. Okay. So tonight, hi, Urana. Hi, Brandon. Welcome. Tonight, we are going to talk about the high price of loneliness. And I want to tell you guys where I got this from. So there is a channel on YouTube some of you may be familiar with called The School of Life. And I've checked out a bit of their content here and there over the years. But this particular video that we are going to look at really, really, really hopped out at me. I thought it was really good. It's a very short video, but to be such a short video, it really had a lot of profound information in it. Most videos in this particular format, I'll be very honest with you guys, I don't particularly care for. I really don't. I want to. I just don't find myself really enjoying the style. But this one was so good. I was like, we're going to do a show on that. And we're going to break down some of the concepts, and we are going to talk about a lot of what was actually in that video. Okay? So much to pull out of this video, so much. We have touched on the topic of loneliness here and there on this channel, and welcome to everyone in the chat. Great to see you guys. And there are 2 streams I think you might be interested in if you're very interested in this topic. The first one is a stream I did on my other channel called A Deeper PTE, and the name of that was The Greatest Fear on Earth, Singularity. I have linked that in the description box below for you. We really get deep into the spiritual side of this loneliness thing. We get deep into that on that channel. And there is another video that I did on that channel, A Deeper PTE, called Empty Seaters. So we'll talk about empty seaters a bit more here in a second, but I wanted to make you aware of those videos. They're both linked in the description box, and they both kind of deal with the same thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just like the video said, this fear of loneliness, I believe personally, is the basis for a lot of the problems that we experience, not only in our own lives, but interpersonal problems that we run into, many of which we've already talked about on the channel before. So a lot of different social problems and things of that nature. Personally, I believe this fear of loneliness is why a lot of relationships fail. I also believe it's why a lot of people end up and stay in narcissistic relationships. And just to kind of deviate, and because we have talked about this many times on this channel before, actually have a whole series going called Sick and Dangerous Men, this fear of loneliness, I believe, is the driving force behind the manosphere. And truly, they have built their entire ideology around the fear of loneliness. And the way that I can prove that to you is one of their number one threats to women is that you're going to die alone. That's one of their number one threats. And really, it's a projection, because what they're doing is projecting their own fear. They're trying to scare women into accepting these toxic relationships with them. And the way that they try to scare women is by saying, hey, if you don't change as a woman, you're going to die alone. In other words, you're going to die without a man by your side. In other words, you're going to die without me, is what they're basically saying. It's a threat, but there's also a lot of projection in that threat because it is their number one fear, dying alone. But this show is not about them. I just thought I'd bring that up because after I watched this video from the School of Life, I was like, wow, this is one of the main reasons they issue these threats all the time. It's their number one fear. They're terrified of being alone. So we'll talk about that another day during that series. Let's get into what the video actually said. The video said, one of the first points it made is it said the fear of being alone is responsible for unhappy relationships and the throttling of psychological development and also a lot of pent-up misery. And the reason that it's responsible for so many unhappy relationships is because a lot of people are choosing these relationships out of that fear of loneliness. So it goes on to say the single greatest contributor to human misery and the driver of some of our most unfortunate decisions is this fear of loneliness. And this made me think a lot about teenagers and how a lot of teenagers will link up with the wrong crowd and run with the wrong crowd out of fear of standing on their own and being alone. It's really, really scary when you're young. I think the older you get and the more money you start to make, you start to establish yourself as an adult, you lose that. Well, a lot of people lose that fear. It starts to lessen a bit the older that you get. But when you're young, that fear of not having friends, not being in the crowd, not being part of the group is more intense, I think, than it is as you get older. But that's just my opinion. So it said the fear of loneliness makes you make some very wrong choices about the company you keep. And it says that you will privilege anyone over the appropriate one because you don't have the strength to hold out for the appropriate one. I thought that was incredibly powerful, especially the use of the word privilege, because it's a reminder that someone being in your company truly is a privilege. That's not to say that you're so high and mighty that someone should be grateful to be around you, but who you are is precious and it has to be protected. That goes for everybody, everyone. So when you have this fear of loneliness, you are more inclined to make very wrong choices about the company that you keep, and therefore you will privilege anyone to be around you. In other words, you will allow anyone to be around you. This makes me think of a video I'm working on for my other channel, Deeper PTE is the channel name, where I pose the question, are we supposed to be these super kind, helpful people who give anyone the shirt off your back? Because it seems to me that those are the people who get clapped out of here the fastest and the most often. Start paying attention when you're watching the news, reading the news, and things of that nature. Look at what they're saying about the people who are unfortunately passing away. They almost always say he or she was the nicest person in the world. They would have given anyone the shirt off their back. Really think about that, but I'm going to deep dive that on my other channel. But anyway, when you privilege anyone over the appropriate one out of a fear of loneliness, it can lead to so many devastating consequences. And how many people can actually testify to that and say, well, I know that, or I knew that I shouldn't have been around him or her, but fill in the blank. You privilege them to be in your life. You privilege them to be around you versus holding out for the person or people who were right for you. And what were the end results? What were the consequences of that decision? I thought that was incredibly powerful. Then it goes deeper. Like this 6-minute video was really, really profound to me. It said, being with not quite the right person sounds almost bearable, but extended over time, it becomes like a pebble in your shoe. Slightly wrong ends up indistinguishable from horrific. So, in other words, a lot of people, and I think a lot of people do this in marriage, a lot of people settle for their marriage partner. They settle for them and they say to themselves, well, he or she is not quite the right person, but it's better than being alone. And they really believe that. Like, that's their mantra. That's what they've told themselves over and over again. They may have even told themselves, well, you're not getting any younger, and he or she is pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And they do. And these are the people who I believe personally often end up cheating on their spouses. They end up having affairs, or quite simply, they might just end up divorced. And the reason is because in many different ways, they settled for bearable. They settled for the one who wasn't quite right, but who am I to be choosy? Who am I to be picky? And I'm not getting any younger, so let me go ahead and do this, Or sometimes there's the sunk cost fallacy going on also, meaning I've been dating this person for a while. We've been together for 3 years. Either we're going to do it now or we're never going to do it at all. And as a result, they go right ahead and marry that person and end up either in affairs or divorcing each other, or sometimes worse, oftentimes worse, because like the video said, over time, it becomes like a pebble in your shoe. When you first discover the pebble in your shoe, it doesn't hurt yet. It's more of a nuisance. It's like, there's something in my shoe. Have any of you, ever had something stuck to the bottom of your sock? And you put your shoes on and you're like, what am I stepping on? So you take your shoes off, you shake your shoes, there's nothing in your shoes, but you keep walking around, you're like, there's something on my sock. And then you find it, like you go looking on your sock, and it's usually something very, very, very small. Well, if you wear that sock all day with something stuck on it, or if you leave that rock in your shoe all day, eventually you're going to have a blister. It's going to develop into some sort of irritation, some sort of major aggravation. So it started off small. If you had taken care of it when it was small, it never would have ballooned into this major aggravation, irritation, hurt, and pain. So a lot of people do this with the people that they choose out of this fear of being alone, the fear of loneliness. And it's exactly like that too. It starts off a small irritation with that person that eventually grows into a major irritation that can sometimes lead to divorce. When they say irreconcilable differences, I think that's what they're talking about. Those differences that started off small and eventually just got so big they couldn't be ignored anymore, like that blister that's on your foot now. Okay? Then it goes even deeper. Like, I was just stunned at this video. It goes even deeper. The video mentioned how when you stay with the person, or when you continue to allow people around you who aren't the appropriate people, but you didn't have the strength to hold out for the appropriate ones, so you privilege anyone to be around you to avoid that loneliness, you eventually end up with what the video called an excruciating loneliness that being on your own could never generate. I said, damn, now isn't that the truth? In other words, surrounded by people and lonely as hell. Because ultimately, you surrounded yourself with inappropriate people for you. They might be appropriate people for someone else, but they were inappropriate for you, but you surrounded yourself with them anyway, out of the fear of loneliness. And as a result, you end up with an excruciating loneliness that could never be generated on your own. Just by being alone, never be generated by just being on your own. So I thought that was extremely profound. And I think this also happens to a lot of celebrities. So when you hear some celebrities say that they're super depressed or that they felt so alone, and yet they're rich, they're famous, they have all these famous friends, they're getting invited to all these parties with all of these different important people, and yet somehow they're still depressed. It's possible that all of those people, in spite of being around all of those people, they were the wrong people for them. And as a result, they end up with this excruciating loneliness that could never have been generated on their own. Never. Like, it's kind of hard to make yourself feel lonely because you still have yourself. Like, you are a self. So if you were sitting in the room with someone else, you are their company, which means that you are a self. So when you're in a room by yourself, you're still with yourself. It's kind of hard to explain, but it makes perfect sense coming out of my mouth, or at least in my brain it makes sense. You are still a self. You're not an inanimate object. So, but I think people forget that. This is where the empty seaters comes in. I think people forget that they are not inanimate objects. Like, you are an actual sentient being all by yourself. They just forget that, but there ain't nothing going on upstairs though. So they can't feel it. Anyway, the video said, when terrified of loneliness, we have no strength to argue for our needs. So in other words, you're in a toxic relationship. You know it's toxic. The other person might know it's toxic. But you're so scared to be alone that you won't fight for your needs. You won't stand up for yourself. You won't advocate for yourself because you're afraid that if you do, you are going to lose that person. And my response to that would be, that's probably a person who needs to be lost. If the idea of you standing up to them or speaking up or advocating for yourself in any way terrifies you because you're afraid it'll make them stop talking to you or stop dealing with you or stop coming around, that's a person who needs to be lost anyway, because that's a person who is ultimately going to have you in a state of excruciating loneliness. Ultimately, maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually that same person will have you feeling a sense of excruciating loneliness. Because what kind of person, number one, is constantly violating their friend or family member's boundaries anyway. But number two, if that person brings it to their attention, they'll leave. That's a narcissist. That's a narc. So you've already lost that game, is what I'm trying to say. So not speaking up for fear of losing them, you've already lost. The game has already been lost. So you might as well say it. If they're going to get pissed off with you one way or the other, you might as well just say it and just expedite the process. You know what I mean? Anywho, it says, oh gosh, I thought this was deep, and we're going to go deeper. I'm just kind of pulling out the main points from this video. Then we're going to deep dive a little bit more. It said, you end up at the mercy of who values loneliness less. Wow. So when you fear loneliness, you end up at the mercy of the person who values loneliness less. In other words, you end up at the mercy of the person who has no problem being alone. No problem. So, in other words, the one who would have the courage to walk away from the relationship, you end up at their mercy. That's deep, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Then it said, it goes into the dynamics between yourself and the other person. So you fear being alone. The video was basically saying that you're using the other person to compensate for your weaknesses, and you also are using other people to distract you. There's a little bit more of that empty seater coming in. You're using other people to distract you basically from the thoughts in your own head. And you're using them to compensate for your weaknesses. So think about how many people don't know how to do certain things because their spouse always does it for them. So think about the wife who doesn't know how to take the car to get the oil changed because my husband always does that. Or this actually happens a lot. The wife who doesn't know how to pay the bills because my husband always does that. Then you can flip-flop it. Think about the husband who can't even do his own laundry because his wife always does it. He doesn't even know what detergent to use. Now, it could be argued that maybe his wife does laundry better because she does it the most, but he still would know how to separate the clothes, put them in a basket, turn on the washing machine, put some detergent in there and go. I'm talking about a state of total helplessness. So they've given that up, and they use other people to compensate for their weaknesses, which some people find beautiful, right? Some people think that's one of the best part of relationships. They'll say things like, you complete me. You know, where I'm weak, you are strong, and vice versa. And that can be beautiful. I'm not going to lie, that can be beautiful. Like maybe your partner is more outspoken than you and you're more soft-spoken. So they're the courageous one. Whatever little example you can come up with. But too often it really is just an act of codependence, if we're being quite honest with each other. That's a different topic, different show. We'll get into that another day. So then he goes on to give some qualities of people who are single. He said the single have no choice but to overcome their inhibitions, and they achieve resilient competence and true social discrimination and freedom. And I thought that was incredibly powerful. When you are single, you have no choice but to become competent in certain areas. You have no choice. When you're single, if you own a vehicle, you have to take it to the shop to get the oil changed. You know what I mean? Male and female. When you're single, if there's no one living there in the house with you, you have to do your laundry. You have to prepare your food and go to the grocery store. Some people don't know how to go grocery shopping, you guys. Grown adults, I'm so serious. Adults who don't know how to go grocery shopping because their spouse always does it for them. When you're single, you don't have someone else doing these things for you. So you develop a resilient competence and true social discrimination and freedom. Basically, because you have the choice, those who aren't afraid of loneliness, you have the choice of who you allow around you. So your discernment almost becomes stronger as a result. You're more easily able to discern people as a result because you don't have someone to hide behind, basically. So you have to protect yourself more than someone who's in a couple situation. You really do, because you don't have that protective cover over you. But it develops social discrimination. Discrimination meaning you're able to choose and distinguish between good and bad. Not discriminate in the sense that not discriminate in the political sense. Discriminate between like, I don't know if I like that crowd, or yeah, that crowd seems okay. Okay? And freedom. So then he comments on people who are in couples, and he said, those who have too lightly signed away their freedoms. I could do a whole show on that line alone. People who basically give up their freedoms easily, just gave it up, just like that. Did not value it. Some of you may remember from, I think this came from my Corporate Cults series, which is available on this channel, where I pose the question and I say, I don't know if you guys know what freedom really is. I said, I'm concerned that you guys don't know what freedom really is. And this is part of what I mean, because if you don't know what freedom really is, you will give it up instantly. You'll give it up immediately. You will sacrifice it like it's nothing, and you won't miss it until it's gone. Then you'll know what freedom is. You'll know what freedom is when it's gone. And then you go, wow, I gave that up. I rolled over and gave it up. Just like that. No fight, no pushback. I just signed my freedoms away just like that. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. A lot of people do this when they just willy-nilly get married. They're so afraid, men and women, so afraid that if I don't act now with this person who I kind of love, I mean, I like them, they're cool, they're all right. If I don't act now, then I'm doomed forever to a life of loneliness. So I'm just going to sign my freedoms away real quick, real fast. And then they end up miserable. Miserable. And they either end up staying in that miserable marriage, they end up having affairs, or they end up divorcing. Miserable. Which is why I'm very curious about the successful marriage rate that I've seen out of the millennials that I know. We'll talk about that another day. But I've seen a lot of long-term marriages. But I guess it boils down to what is truly long-term. Because right now I'm seeing people going on like 20 years. They got married when they were like 18 or 19 and have been married for going on 20 years, some of them. I'm like, wow. Now tell me how the millennials figured it out when their parents' generation had one of the highest divorce rates in the country. Now, how did that happen? Either they learned from their parents' mistakes or they're getting ready to repeat them, one or the other. So I'm kind of watching. Of course, I'm rooting for every marriage. I think happy marriages, happy families are a good thing. I think we need more of that. But I just find it peculiar. I find it peculiar that this is the crew that came from parents largely that had very high divorce rates, and yet they're staying together. Now, how is that and why is that? But anyway, this is just a very small sample size. This is just from the people that I know. That's it. Okay? You all might know, have a totally different experience, but this is just from the people that I know. Okay? So anyway, let's continue. It said, he starts talking about all the different people you won't have an opportunity to get to know. And it said, and then he said, it isn't just other people we don't get to know, it's also ourselves. So he gets to speaking about how you don't get to even know yourself when you're constantly surrounded by other people. Out of a fear of loneliness, you never even get to know yourself. That's why I don't trust a lot of these people, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. I don't trust you because you don't even know who you are. So how can you be my friend when you don't even know who you are? You know what I mean? You don't even know who you are. So how can you be my friend? But anyway, he said you grow used to cozy mediocrity. You lose your curiosity, you lose your restlessness. Learning stops, and you believe that you've answered your needs completely. And you've also suppressed your needs. All of that takes place. So basically what I was getting ready to say is a lot of people who, when I see them, like they're always surrounded by other people and always buddied up, coupled up. Dang, there's another phrase. I just can't think of it. What is it? I don't remember. Booed up. There we go. You're always booed up. I don't trust you, because when do you ever stop and think your own thoughts? When do you ever self-reflect? When do you ever go into a state of meditation? You don't. You can't. You're constantly surrounded by other people. I don't trust you, because there's a strong chance that you have become all of these things. Mediocre, basically lazy. You've lost your curiousness, which I've seen firsthand. They're not interested in anything other than what happened. They're not interested in anything other than the status quo. Just keeping the days the same, day after day after day. They're not interested in anything else. You lose your passion for life, basically. You stop learning, so they're not interested in learning anything new. And they believe that they've already answered all of their needs completely. So basically, when something stops growing, it's dead. The number one sign that something has died is it stops growing. And it becomes stiff and rigid. And I didn't make that up. I saw that somewhere on YouTube. I just don't remember where. But I was watching something about Zen, maybe. I don't know. But it was saying that when a plant dies, it becomes stiff, rigid, and it stops growing. It loses its flexibility. So basically, in other words, what I'm trying to say is people like this, we're talking about a very specific group. This here's the whole sentence. The fear of loneliness drives them to collect people around them so they don't feel so lonely. And as a result, they grow mediocre. They lose their curiosity. They lose their restlessness. Learning ceases, and they believe they've answered all their needs completely. You're dead. You have died. You're already dead. You are the walking dead at this point. And I can tell. Yes, it decays. The chat says it decays. Yes, they start to decay. And I promise you guys, they are aging faster than people who I know who are single, including myself. Including myself. Like, I still get carded. And I know a lot of times it's just because they have to, because their boss is there, they have to card everyone, whatever. But I think it's funny when I get carded. I'm like, are you serious? Like, look at me. Like, you think I'm not 21 years old? Seriously? Well, thank you, darling. Thank you. You just made my whole day. You don't think I'm 21? Oh, well, sugar, you just made my whole day. Honey, thank you. Thank you. It's because I don't keep a whole bunch of bullshit around me, if we're being perfectly honest. So thank you. But I mean it, though. Like, if I become one of those old women who's like 90, but I look 60, and they're like, what's your secret? I'm going to say, keeping the riffraff away from me. Keeping people who get on my nerves away from me. And we're going to get into that here in a second. But I'm serious, though. I'm being completely honest about it, because here's the whole thing. Once these people have collected all these individuals around them and they start to develop that excruciating loneliness, it ages you, because a lot of these people are deeply trapped. They are trapped, honey. They're trapped and they can't get out. There's no easy way out of the trap that they have set for themselves and walked into. So the sense of being trapped will age you rapidly. The sense of being surrounded by empty, hollow, vapid people will age you rapidly. Rapidly. So I see some of my peers that I went to school with. I'm like, dang, girl. Or, dang, boy. What happened? Like, what happened to you? This is what happened to them, you guys. I'm telling you. And I think I've said this before on the channel, like, one of my greatest disappointments has been watching all of these people who I had such high hopes for, because I just knew they were just going to take off with life. Like, as soon as we graduated high school, some of them I knew were going to go to college, others went to military, others did whatever. But there were certain people I was like, they are going to take off and they are going to conquer life. And they're just going to be so inspirational to watch their life play out. Honey, they rolled over and gave it up. They gave it up. And it was so sad. And it still is very sad to see, to the point where I can barely go on Facebook anymore. Y'all know I'm a Facebook lurker. I lurk on Facebook. I watch from the clouds. I don't interact. I don't post on there anymore for years now. I just lurk to see what everyone's up to. And I'm like, this is depressing. This is actually depressing. I don't want to watch this anymore, because I'm like, it's just the same life repeated. I'm just seeing everyone live the same identical life with just different key players in it. And that's depressing to me. I'm like, you're not going to try to do anything else? And I don't mean like try to become famous or anything like that, you guys, but I'm talking about, I knew people who were dancers, meaning like not ballet, but I can't think of the other, like jazz dancers. I don't know the proper terminology, but y'all know what I mean. What I'm basically saying is, I'm not saying strippers. When I say dancers, I'm not referring to strippers. I mean like the dancers, you know what I mean? I knew people who were dancers, some people who were amazing playing certain instruments. Other people were great at sports. I knew artists in high school, singers in high school, comedians, people who were just pure comedians in high school. All these different interesting characters that I knew, I was like, I cannot wait to watch their life unfold. And most of them flatlined and gave it up. They gave it up to be surrounded by humans, but so empty inside. It is the saddest thing I've ever seen, y'all. Super sad. It's sad to me. Contemporary, thank you. They were contemporary dancers, yes. Amazing too, brilliant, like amazing to watch. I was like, wow, she'll probably end up on Broadway someday. Nope, flatlined, okay? And that's their choice. People don't have to live their lives to entertain me. It's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to be entertained. What I'm saying is, there was so much potential wrapped in all of us. I felt like so much potential. And so many of them have already given up that potential. They gave it up. And I'll stop there because I don't want to offend, but they gave up their potential. Like their lives are over, basically. Basically. So let's continue. And good point. So the chat says, we live in a society that doesn't support artists. And you're very, very right about that. I guess what I'm saying is, in spite of them having sacrificed their life, a portion of it, they still could have been kind of giving birth to who they were on the other side. Do you see what I mean? Like, just because you're married doesn't mean you can't keep painting. You know what I mean? Just because you're married doesn't mean you have to stop dancing. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I mean. Like, yes, it is. Chat says it's very depressing to see people's potential die. Yes, it is. It's sad. That's why people who chase their dreams, even if they're not necessarily successful, I still have a lot of respect for them because they tried. They still tried. Like they still tried to honor who they truly are inside. And even if they weren't successful, at least they tried. You know what I mean? So I'll stop there because I don't want to offend, because that conversation could very easily become offensive. And I don't want to offend. I'm not trying to offend. I'm just being honest. So let me give 2 more points and then I'll get into some more thoughts that I have regarding this video. And then we'll get out of here. Welcome, everyone. I can't wait to go back and read all of your comments later. The video said we should, from a young age, learn that being alone never means something is wrong with us. And I thought this was so powerful and something that we maybe should consider teaching children, because typically when children are alone, it's sometimes as the result of a punishment. So often when a child gets in trouble, I don't know if people do this anymore, but back in the day, if you got in trouble, you had to go to your room, basically alone. You have to go be alone. And that is the punishment. The punishment is you are no longer part of the group. You are now alone, off to yourself. So for many, it came to be perceived as a punishment. And what if we took the opposite approach? Like, children still need discipline, but what if we came up with some other ways to discipline, and we consciously and actively and on purpose, I hate to say forced, I'll say made children to spend 15 or 20 minutes alone, just for the sake of them knowing that it's okay. You know, for the next 30 minutes, you're going to be on your own. I want you to think. I want you to write, take a little nap if you want to, draw something, you know, like spend some time alone. It's okay. It's all right to be alone sometimes. It's not a punishment. It's not a bad thing, because then they grow up becoming people who feel like I must have people around me at all times, or something is wrong, or I've done something wrong. Like, what if we took that approach with kids? They would grow up to be people who wouldn't turn into the extroverts that we were talking about on one of my more recent live streams, called introvert shaming. Like, good Lord, I feel like today's workplace is nothing more than group activities. It's extended kindergarten is what it is. I was looking at something on LinkedIn the other day, and I was like, these people never got over kindergarten. Never. They never got over kindergarten. And it's like everything must be done as a group. Everything. There's always opportunities for... They took the concept of the human being being a social animal, which we are, a social species, but they took it too far, because they forgot that the human is also a very solitary creature as well. There's both. You have to have balance, and that there's nothing wrong with the solitary aspect of humanity. Nothing. And actually, you probably could use some more of it. But everything has to be group, social media, social, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Group me, meet up. Hell, what else is there? TikTok. Like everything is together. Watch me, look at me, watch. Together, group. They're always trying to group somebody. Those of you who go to corporate training events, what's one of the first things they want you to do? Go into a breakout group. Breakout, group, breakout group. Happy hour, lunch, group. Always togetherness, as if people won't find their way to each other. Like, as if people won't naturally group up. They will, but it's so forced, and I just don't understand. I really don't. I understand the need for it as a balancer to the solitude that you also need. What if instead of a breakout room or a breakout group, you broke out on your own? Go break out and go sit for 20 minutes with this concept. Then come back to the group and tell everyone what you thought of when you were by your freaking self. This is why a lot of people who don't struggle with loneliness have been thriving during this work from home era. Absolutely thriving during this era, because it's what they always needed. It's what a lot of us always needed. Even the ones who think they're extroverts, you needed some alone time as well. You did. And I know you're wrestling with it and you're struggling with it and fighting against it, but you needed it too. You really, really did. So anyway, the final point he makes in the video is to make a genuine peace with the prospect of a life by yourself, and I agree so much, because it's truly the only thing that is guaranteed. No one can guarantee you friends. No one can even guarantee you family for life. It's not a guarantee. You know how many people lose their families halfway through their lives? Like they had a whole family and then all of a sudden one day that family is gone. Think about it. It's tragic, it's sad, but it does happen. It happens. A lot of people have lost the friends that they grew up with, and not necessarily behind anything tragic. They just stopped talking, grew apart, drifted apart. So your friends aren't guaranteed. Your family is a little bit more guaranteed, but not really. The only thing that's guaranteed is your actual life for as long as it lasts. So there's your guarantee. You better find a way to make peace with the actual guarantee versus the idyllic guarantee. Okay? Chat says, I deactivated my Facebook page. Everything was on repeat. Right? Like everyone's life has become the same, at least from what they're posting on Facebook. And I find that to be so incredibly boring. It's like, is this really what we're going to do until what? We die? So let's just say Facebook lasts for another 100 years, which I don't think it will, but let's just play make-believe. Is this really what we're going to do for the next 100 years? Really? Like, it's very dull to me. It's like, where are the inventors? Where are the entrepreneurs? There's a couple entrepreneurs sprinkled here and there, but I mean the true entrepreneurs. Where are the people who are really taking a chance? You know what I mean? Which I know is hard, especially right now in our economy and this day and age. I know that's hard, but where are the courageous people, man? Where are the people with courage and who think it's worth a shot? Where are they? Like, where are these people? Like, everyone just like gave it up. They just died, man. It's so sad. It's so sad to me. And you know what? There's a possibility they think the same thing about me, but I don't see how that could be because I don't post anything on Facebook. So they don't really know what I have going on. They don't know what I'm up to these days, which is perfect. I like it that way. Like, if this ever takes off and blows up, you know what I mean? And especially if I ever start coming on camera, then it might change. They'll be like, oh, that's what she's been up to all these years. But before that, I kind of like it that way. At least there's some mystery there. Hell, at least I'm offering mystery. You know what I mean? Like, where is she? Who is she dating? What does she look like these days? Where is she working? What projects is she working on? I know she's up to something, you know. At least I'm offering mystery. You know what I mean? So let me get into a few more thoughts and then we'll get out of here. I might do comments tonight. We'll see. So those were all the points from the actual video. A 6-minute video had all of those points in it. Highly recommend watching it yourself. It is linked in the description box for you. Here are a few more thoughts regarding this topic and we'll get out of here. The first thought was about nerves. So to start, I really believe that the ability to be alone and the ability to be on my own is one of my personal strengths. And I think it always has been. It has never bothered me. When I was a younger adult, like a teenager, young adult, yes, I wanted friends. Yes, I wanted a boyfriend. All that. And I had those. I had a whole bunch of friends. I had a boyfriend. You know what I mean? I had a social circle. But I think at the core, I never really asked for it, if that makes sense. It just kind of was. And I think that's the nature of school. Like school, it just kind of is. But I had no problem once I got home being in my room, watching TV, because that was the big thing to do back then. Watching TV. I used to play Super Nintendo when I was younger. I would play my Super Nintendo, read books, turn on the music, and dance in my room. Draw, organize my books. You know, just all kinds of little things that preoccupied my mind. I've always had the ability to preoccupy myself. So I've never had an issue with being alone. Now that I'm older, it's all I dream of. And when people talk about things like marriage, I'm like, wow, that sounds like I would have to live with another person. Is that what that means? Marriage? That sounds like I have to live with another person like all the time, right? You're asking a lot. However, my duplex, some of you know about the duplex idea. I'd be perfectly fine getting married as long as we buy out a townhouse building that has 2 townhouses, maybe 3. We buy out the whole lot, all 3 of them or both of them. He lives he lives in one townhouse and I live next door in the other one. That sounds perfect to me. That's about as close as you're going to get me. All right. But anyway, I really prefer my alone time. I kind of need it, like I crave it. In the past, when I've had to travel for work, all I've wanted to do was get to my hotel room, order some food, eat it, watch a little bit of local TV, and go to sleep. That was it. And probably wash my hair because I hate travel hair. Once I've been all in the airport, on the airplane, in the shuttle, all I want to do is wash my hair when I get to the hotel room. That's it. Because I feel dirty. Anyway, that's a different conversation, but that's all I'm really trying to do. I'm not trying to hang out with my coworkers who are in the hotel with me. I'm really not. Love you to death, but I'm not trying to kick it with you once we get to where we're going. Anyway, what the hell is that? Is that a bird? Who knows? Anyway, what I find most interesting, and part of what drives this, is that people don't seem to have nerves that can be bothered. So what I mean by that is part of the okay, let me back up a little bit. Remember earlier from the video when it said that people who are extremely lonely or fear loneliness will privilege anyone to be around them. See, I'm not like that. And part of the reason that I'm not like that is because people tend to get on my nerves. I'm not going to lie to you guys. All right. Now, I don't consider that a strength. I think maybe I would try to work on it. I just wouldn't know how to actually fix it. But people tend to get on my nerves. And I think it's a good thing, though, because it keeps a lot of riffraff away from me. So I'll give you an example. I will observe a couple from a distance or even know a couple. Either I'll know them or I'll observe some random couple from a distance. And I'll say to myself, wow, he would really get on my nerves. he would really get on my nerves. Or I would say something like, she would really get on my nerves if I were a man. Like, you men who have problems out of women, I don't understand why, because sometimes I'm exposed to these women and I'm like, girl, you are so annoying. And it's like, if you would just honor that feeling as a man, half of y'all wouldn't end up with these toxic women that you end up with. You wouldn't. She's annoying. Oh my God. I'm like, I think to myself, how can he stand to be around her like that? And vice versa. How can she stand to be around him like that? And I have a one-liner that I've been sitting on for years, you guys. You want to hear it? I'm just waiting for some woman to accuse me of wanting her man so I can say back to her, girl, I do not want your husband, honey. He is so aggravating. I don't see why you do. And mean it, though. Like, seriously mean it. Like, he's super annoying. I don't see how you can stand to be around him. So I don't want it. But I mean that, y'all. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being honest with you guys. I'm trying to illustrate a point. My nerves and the ability to get on them keep me away from a lot of people. They really do. And so my point that I'm making is a lot of people, though, don't seem to have that same nerve system. Because that's the question I will ask. How can he stand to be around her? How can she stand to be around him? He or she is so annoying. But here's the truth of the matter. They probably do have those nerves, but they are so afraid to be alone that they override the irritating parts of this person, the pebble in the shoe. They override that in favor of not being alone. They override it. So he or she probably does get on their nerves, but they are so scared to be alone, they just deal with it. And just like the pebble in the shoe, the longer that pebble is in the shoe, the worse it's going to get over time. Period. Period. Like, that's just what it is, you know? So, in essence, I avoid pairing up with the wrong people. Or if I do find myself accidentally paired up with the wrong people, it doesn't last for very long because I can't stand to be annoyed or aggravated. And it's just something I can't tolerate. So I avoid them. That might be a character flaw, but I'm just being open and honest with you guys. Like, people can be kind of annoying, man. Like, kind of aggravating in ways that I don't think are like high maintenance. You know what I mean? For example, some people are very, very, very loud. They are loud people. There are some YouTubers I can't watch because they are so loud. There's a girl who, as a person, I love her dearly as a person. I love her personality. I think she's fun. I think she's funny and all that. But I haven't spoken to her in years and I haven't visited with her in years because she is so loud. She made me wonder if she's actually deaf or hard of hearing. And no offense to those who may be deaf or hard of hearing, not trying to be offensive, but she was so loud. The last time I hung out with her, I thought to myself, I wonder if I can invest in some clear earplugs that I can conceal with my hair. So just kind of pull my hair down over my ears and have them in though. And then that way I could stand to be around her. But, otherwise, I don't think I can be around this girl because she's so loud. And a lot of YouTubers are extremely loud, and I can't watch them either. They're so loud. But you see what I mean, though? That's what I mean by the ability to have my nerves getting on my nerves. I don't think a lot of people, they either don't have that or they override it in favor of not being lonely. But that's how you end up miserable. Because if that actually gets on your nerves, this person is incredibly loud, it's never going to not get on your nerves. But you've committed to staying because you don't want to be alone. So now you're miserable and you're aging early. Do you see how that works? Like, it's kind of deep. So, in other words, they are more terrified of being alone than being aggravated. And I'm the exact opposite. I'm more terrified of being aggravated than being alone. Because to me, I feel like that's one of our most human instincts. When something is bothering you, no matter what kind of judgment you want to assign to it, when something is bothering you, the ability to separate yourself from it, I believe, is a natural human instinct. And I think it's a survival instinct as well. So when you deny yourself your survival instinct and you essentially trap yourself in a situation, it's a quick way to make yourself miserable. It's a detour to misery. All right. You were on the highway. You want to take a detour to misery. That's how you do it. You trap yourself with things that you can't escape. So, just kind of on that thread before I move on, there's a lot of men who got ruled out as dating options for me because I found them annoying. There was something about them that was irritating to me. And I would think to myself, could I picture myself living with him and being involved with him for the rest of my life? The answer was no. And I think, let me back up a little bit, because I don't want to make it sound like what I'm expecting out of people is perfection, because I'm not. What I'm expecting is perfection for me. So in other words, I'm trying to find the man who doesn't aggravate me, basically. He might have things about him, but those things might not actually bother me, but they would bother another woman. Do you see what I mean? So if you ever hear of me getting married, or if you ever hear me tell you I got married, the first thought that you should think to yourself is he must not get on her nerves, because he doesn't, and he won't. He won't. So take that for what you will, but it is what it is. Because why marry somebody who gets on your nerves? Why marry someone who aggravates you? That makes no sense to me. Which to me is different than someone making you mad from time to time. Like you and your significant other might get in an argument about something specific, or he or she pissed you off on this particular day, but on a day-to-day basis, they don't get on your nerves. Do you see what I mean? To me, there's a difference. Like you're going to have disagreements with other people in life because we're all different, but that's quite different to me than someone who consistently gets on your nerves. So anyway, there's my thoughts on that. It's just a commentary on nerves in general, and either these people are overriding their nerve system or they don't have one at all. And I tend to lean towards they're overriding it. Like that person absolutely gets on their nerves, but they are so scared of being alone, they just accept it. All right. So let's move on to the next thought. The next thought I had regarding this video was the whole concept of being at the mercy of the one who fears loneliness less. And what this made me think of was the live stream we did on narcissism and introvert shaming. So the thought I had was, could this be why I run into trouble on the job and problems on the job? Could it be because they can sense that I fear loneliness less than they do? Can they sense that if they all left the office and left me there by myself, that I might actually be happy about that? Can they sense that? Can they sense that if I never got invited out to lunch with them, that I might actually be happier than getting invited to lunch? Can they sense that about me? And does that make them feel like they're at my mercy? Which you're not, because like I've said before, honey, I'm not thinking about you like that. I'm thinking about this work, thinking about the next paycheck, and thinking about what I need to do when I get off of work. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm not sitting here like, ha, they're at my mercy because they fear being alone. That's what psychopaths do, I think. And that's what narcissists do. They sit around thinking about how they can negatively affect other people. Honey, I'm not thinking about you at all. Other than good morning, good afternoon, all right, have a good night. You know, have fun this weekend. Like professional, polite, concerned about you as the human. Like I care about you as a human, but You're not in my every thought. So I wonder if they feel or if they can sense that I fear loneliness less than they do. And if that's kind of what short circuits and triggers them a little bit, and we were talking about that on the other live stream. Like, in other words, why do extroverts harass introverts the way that they do? That could be part of the reason, like, wow, this person is not scared to be alone, and I am. So what does that mean? What does that say about me? What does that say about them? You know, and would they be perfectly fine if we were never entangled with each other? And the answer is yes. They would be perfectly fine. It would actually be preferable if we weren't entangled like that. So I think it has a lot to do with that. I think it's something to think about for sure. And then the other part about not on the job, but introverts and extroverts in general. And this is not all extroverts, you guys. But based on the characteristics they laid out in that article, we just got some question marks there. But could it be possible that a lot of extroverts are trying to use introverts to compensate for their weaknesses, just like the video was saying? So you feel scared, lost, and alone. So you're trying to reach for the person who doesn't to compensate for that feeling that you have in yourself as an extrovert. I mean, by definition, extroverts get their energy from socializing with other people, from the outside world, basically. So if that outside world is not there for you to pull supply from, are you dying now? Or do you feel like, does that create a sense of terror in you? And does that make you feel like you can't function if no one is around you to draw that energy from? Do you see what I mean? And again, we're not supposed to be judging extroverts because we don't want them to judge introverts. I'm just asking questions based on what we know. Are they trying to use introverts to compensate for their own weaknesses? Is introversion perceived as a strength from someone who absolutely needs other people around them to get energy? Is someone who doesn't seen as a different type of being. Some of you may not have seen the quote at the start of the show, but it basically, here, let me put it up real quick. Boom. Whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. Is this how extroverts see people who don't fear loneliness? Do they look at you from the corner like, that's either a wild beast or a god? I don't know which one, but I'm intrigued and I'm going to keep bothering them until they pay attention to me. You see what I mean? It's something to think about. Is there a compensation aspect for their weaknesses? Because think about it. An introvert doesn't require anything really from the outside world to be recharged, whereas the extrovert does. So what does that say about the person who doesn't require anything from the outside world to get their energy and feel like a human being? It's really, really deep, you guys. It's something to think about. So we talked already a little bit about those who have too lightly signed away their freedoms. We talked about that. And I consider those people who are enmeshed or entangled with others that they really don't like that much. Like if you are happily married, you love your spouse loves you, they don't get on your nerves. You know what I mean? Y'all respect each other, you have a great balance. I'm not really talking about you. I'm talking about those people who are coupled up, booed up with other people and are miserable in that situation. Well, they probably too lightly signed away their freedom. They gave it up. So it's something to think about. Think about people who find themselves in miserable circumstances for extended periods of time. Because I think from time to time, we'll all find our way to a miserable circumstance. It's whether or not you're actually able to get out of it that matters, I think. I think that's the important thing, that you recognize you're in a miserable circumstance and then you work to free yourself from that circumstance. Is it a situation where you signed your freedom away too fast? That goes for relationships, jobs, pretty much anything. Did you give up your freedom too fast? Did you give it away like it was nothing, when really it's everything and it's the most important thing that you have? Like, that's what I would tell if I had teenagers or young adults in my life. I would say, whatever you do, try to maintain your freedom and hold on to it like it's the most priceless thing you've ever been given, because it is. Because it is. Like, I've been in relationships in the past that could have ended in marriage, but when I would weigh those relationships, I'm like, man, is this person, this particular person, is this the one who can go long haul? Or would I be giving up my freedom for a terrorist, basically? For someone who will ultimately become that blister from that rock in my shoe? Like, I've always been terrified of giving birth to a child of a man who is essentially a terrorist in disguise. So it's like I have guarded my freedom with my life and will continue to do so, because it's just too precious. Like, once it's gone, a lot of times it's gone. So I guard it with a certain fierceness. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as I start to see this person as a liability, that's pretty much it for me. And that liability issue has a lot to do with my sense of freedom. Do I want to be attached to you? Do I want to be burdened with you? Do I want to be entangled and enmeshed with you? And when I really run those scenarios in my head, I'm like, nah, don't think so. Relationships gotta go. Sorry. So then I wanted to touch on this part where he said, it's also ourselves that we don't get to know. So he was saying that people who fear loneliness rapidly sign away their freedom, and they end up in these relationships and long-term circumstances where basically they're miserable and they're suffering from an excruciating loneliness, partially because they can't go out and meet new people and be gregarious like they want to be or might want to be. You know, they're stuck with this person. They're trapped, basically. But he said it's also ourselves that we don't get to know. He said the constant presence of companions stops us from making friends with our own minds and exploring our feelings and ideas in a way that only extended stretches of solitude allows. And this is where I wrote off to the side, empty seaters. They basically become empty seaters, basically, because they're not friends with their own mind. They don't know their own mind. They don't know their own thoughts, feelings, and ideas. And they couldn't, because that only happens in extended stretches of solitude. And if you never have any true solitude, then how can you ever really truly get to know yourself? You know, that's what that is one of the main reasons I really don't want to live with anyone else, y'all. Because if you can't tell, I have a strong need to think my thoughts all the way through. I have to. Like, I have a thought, I need to complete that thought. And when I observe couples, and I've had the opportunity to observe couples both within their home and then just kind of like outside, which sounds weird. It sounds like I'm looking in the window. But what I mean is like when you watch little couple YouTube channels or people on TV or whatever, like, these people can't even think their own thoughts half the time. Either the other person is running their mouth the whole entire time or interrupting them the other half of the time. So a person goes to make a thought, and before they can even finish the thought, here comes the other person jumping in, cutting them off, taking over the conversation, dominating the conversation. Then they start talking. You never even got to finish your complete thought or whatever it was that you were thinking about. And I just look on these couples. I'm like, wow, what a miserable circumstance. I'm so glad I get to leave. I am so glad I get to go home. And I pity you that you have to stay here because you can't even think your own thoughts. You can't even have a complete thought. You know what I mean? And I think that's sad to not be able to express yourself. So again, if I ever found myself married, you could say to yourself, well, he must let her complete her thoughts, and vice versa. Like, I don't want it to be a monologue. I have a thought. Here's my thought. What's your thought? Then I listen to his thought. You know what I mean? But in a natural way, though, not robotic. You know? But to live with someone who constantly interrupts you, constantly jumping in, you know what I mean? Like, you can't really have a conversation because you can't really finish the point that you were trying to make. To me, that's misery. To me, that is the definition of misery. I don't care how much money he makes. Chat says Judge Million and her husband. Is that how they are? I've never seen them. I don't care how much money he makes. I don't care how fine or attractive he is. I don't care how how much he handles business. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you keep short-circuiting my thoughts, I'm going to divorce you. I'm going to. That's why you need to live in the townhouse next door. Short-circuit your own thoughts while I finish mine. You know what I mean? Like, here's another way to look at it. Like, I could never marry a man who wouldn't let me hop on and do my live streams without, like, popping his head in the door every 2 seconds. Like, babe, I'm on live. Oh, you're on live? Yeah, I'm live. Oh, my bad. Okay. All right, guys, going back to it. So what I was saying, what is it, honey? It's in the closet. I put it in the closet this morning. No, I didn't move it. Did you look? Go look again. Okay. All right. Man, I'm telling you, I would lose my mind. I would go crazy. I would go catatonic on you guys. I would go catatonic. Chat says, I gave one loud person a 1 hour time limit to visit the guys at my house because I couldn't handle the loudness at the time. I'm telling you, those decibels are something else, man. And some people are perfectly fine with it. It's like, man, I'm working on such a theory for my other channel, Deeper PTE. It's too deep for PTE, but it is perfect for Deeper PTE. But basically, just to give a teaser, like, I'm telling you, human beings are very, very different from each other. Like, we are different. We are built different. And I'll just leave it there because I don't want to give away too much. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But I don't see how it doesn't bother other people. I'm like, either your hearing doesn't work or your hearing is fine-tuned to not hear it, basically, which I guess is the same as not working. Or you might be struggling with hearing it, one or the other. I don't know. But I don't know how that loudness doesn't bother people, man. But it doesn't. Anyway, this I thought was really, really deep. And it actually made me think of narcissists a lot. But essentially, he was saying that when you fear loneliness to the point that you'll basically accept anybody and you just settle into these hollow relationships, really, he says you grow used to cozy mediocrity, you lose your curiosity, you lose your restlessness, learning ceases, and you believe that you've answered all your needs completely. And it made me think of narcs because it made me think of how narcissists in many different ways live the same day every day, and they also want to live the same day every day. Don't rock the boat. Don't come in here with your crazy new ideas or crazy interesting things. They do the same things. They move like a herd, basically. Ooh, chat says a numbness to dysfunction. They move like a herd, and anything that comes in to kind of break that veil is rejected immediately for the most part. Like, they've lost everything interesting about them. They're not interested in learning anything new or different or challenging. They're not trying to wrestle with any ideas. They're not trying to disrupt the status quo. These are the worst people to work with, by the way, because these are the people who know that everything is wrong in your particular workplace, but they will do absolutely nothing to change it, because doing something to change it means disrupting the status quo. And that's the last thing they want to do. A lot of our politicians are like this, but we're not here to talk politics tonight. But they've become mediocre. They're not curious anymore. Their hunger and passion for life is dead. They've settled down, basically. They're not interested in learning anything new. They would never read a book. They wouldn't even listen to an audiobook. They're not interested. They believe they've answered all their needs completely, which also means they think they have all the answers already. They think they know everything already. They think that they figured out life, but really they're in terms of figuring out life, they're at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, their lives have largely become on autopilot, basically. And they are nightmares to deal with in real life and in particular on the job. They're nightmares to deal with. In many ways, they are boring. They're boring. There's nothing interesting about them. They have nothing new to report to you. Why would they? They've lost their curiosity, their restlessness. Like, think about how many inventions we probably should have. And trust me, I know how hard it is to give birth to an invention that you can like roll out to the world. But I just feel like we are missing so many inventions and so many innovations, you guys, which are born out of necessity. Like there's at least probably 10 or 20 different things that I need invented because they would make my life easier. And if I ever figure out how to actually bring them to life, I will, you know? But there's other people who, they don't need anything invented, honey. They're good. Everything has been solved for them. And that is sad. To me, that's when death occurs. You've experienced a brain death or a spiritual death. So it's kind of like our society has stagnated because of this, I think. Our society has stalled out in many different ways because of this reason. Because, oh God, there's so many different overlapping theories going on right now. Because our culture so pushes connect, relationship, get together, and does not honor the individual human, ever, hardly, that this is what people have become: cozy, mediocre, lost curiousness, lost restlessness. They don't want to learn anything beyond school. That's it. And they think they know everything already. They believe all of their needs have been answered. So there's nothing new to invent. There's nothing new to create. There's nothing new to develop. Like, I'll give you a perfect example of an invention that I need to have happen. And if it already exists, please let me know. But I've looked. I don't think it does yet. But I desperately need them to design these computers to where you can have 2 mice going at the same time. So, for example, I have 3 different computer screens, one in front of me and one to my right, one to the left. I need a mouse that kind of lives on the left computer screen. And I need my other mouse to kind of live on the center computer screen. And I need them both to be able to work at the same time and receive commands, not simultaneously, because that would require like 2 hands. But what I mean is, like, I can click the left screen with that mouse, come back to the center mouse and click the screen. You see what I'm saying? Little stuff like that. Little things I need invented. They don't care, honey. As long as they have a screen and 1 mouse, they're fine. They're fine. And this is why these corporations won't jump any higher, why they won't reach any higher, because they know society at large has become complacent, I think is the word that I'm looking for. It makes you very complacent as a person. Chat says the desire to know your own soul will end all other desires. Interesting. By Rumi. Interesting. All right. So I thought that was profound, a profound piece of this video. What it actually does to the person themselves It just turns them into a lump, basically. It's so sad. It's really sad to see. And the final thought that I want to share on this is the video closes out by saying, make peace with the prospect of a life by yourself. And I think this is so important, like I shared earlier, because it is the only thing that's actually guaranteed to you for the duration of your life. So it's almost like when you stop searching so hard for that other thing, you'll kind of find it, if that makes sense. So instead of this desperate, clinging search to have somebody right in your face all the time, why don't you be the somebody in your face and find an interest in your life, because your life is interesting. And by virtue of that, you will naturally attract, or you should naturally attract, the people who are right for you versus trying to force it. It's that force that creates all the problems. And trust me, I know people want to hang out, they want to have fun, they want to party, they want to do birthdays and all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. What the wrong part comes in where you feel like you can't live without it, because you might have to live without it someday. And are you going to die if that happens, or will you be okay? The only thing that's truly guaranteed is you. There are some philosophical theories that say the only thing that truly exists is you. So you all are listening to this live stream right now, but how are you so sure that I exist? How are you so sure that I'm not a figment of your imagination? How am I so sure that you guys aren't a figment of my imagination? You see what I mean? I forgot what theory it is. If anyone knows, please put it in the chat. But it's a very popular theory from philosophy where it basically says that the only thing that you can really prove is what's going on in your brain. That's the only thing that you can truly prove. So it's entirely possible that you are hallucinating the rest of the world. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm saying that that is a theory, one of the philosophical theories, that in essence, you could be imagining all of this. I could be imagining you guys, or you guys could be imagining me. I feel pretty real, but how can I prove that? I can't prove that because everything is processing through my brain. So how do I know that this is not some sort of glorified trip? How do I know that I'm not tripping? Solipsism, is that what it is? Solipsism, is that what that is? How do I know that I'm not like on some mushroom trip on planet Venus, tripping this whole experience? How do I know that? I don't. I can't prove it. But it's a theory. If you're not, if you don't have a firm grip on reality, just forget everything I just said, okay? Because what's really real anyway? But my point is that because the only thing you can truly prove is your life, then learn to value it. And when you do come across those treasured friendships, they'll be that much more special than the friendships or relationships that you tried to force. Okay? So, it is solipsism. Am I saying it correctly? Solipsism. So look into solipsism if you're interested in that, y'all. It's very, very fascinating. The theory that you are the only thing that truly exists. Because here's the thought process behind it. They say that we can only see because light bounces off of an object, hits our eyes, and then the image that is reflected into our eyes goes like to the back of our brain. Our brain converts it and like interprets it. You see what I mean? So if that's the case, if I can only see things because light bounced off of something and came back to my eyes and my brain interprets it, then how do I know that anything truly exists at all? If y'all want to get into that, let me know, and we'll do a show on a Deeper PTE where we talk about all the different philosophical theories. I actually think that could be fun. That could be a really good show. Perfect pronunciation. Yay. Hooray. So, I mean, it is quite the thing to think about, like even down to touch. You touch something, you say, my desk is here because I'm looking at it, number one, and I'm touching it. Well, your sense of touch comes from your nerves, and your nerves relay information to your brain and say, this is a desk that you're touching. That's what my hands are touching the desk. My nerves send the signal to my brain to communicate to me that this is a desk. But how do I know this desk is really here if it's my brain telling me that it is? It's deep, y'all. It's deep. It goes deep, and it's very, very trippy. It's something to think about. It really is. Like, okay, I'm sitting in a chair. I know I'm in a chair because I can feel it. I'm seated. My body is seated and I'm touching it. Well, the only reason you know that is because your nerve endings are sending that message to your brain. So is the chair really there? Or is your brain just telling you that it is? Y'all, we ain't gonna get that deep tonight. Okay, y'all do want that episode. Okay, I'll work on that. I'll pull some of the more popular ones and maybe some lesser known ones, and we will do a whole deep dive on my other channel, A Deeper PTE. You can find your way to it through the link tree that is linked in the description box. But with that, you guys, I am going to go ahead and wrap up the show. I'm not going to read through comments tonight, but I am going to read them once they go live. So thank you all so much for being here. There is a possibility that the School of Life may not appreciate me showing their video, and I might have to edit it out. If that happens, the live chat will disappear. But I did record tonight's episode. So if that happens, I'll just rip it and then I will put it on the Permission to Exist Odyssey channel, okay? With that, I appreciate you all so much. I hope I gave you something to think about. Don't be scared to be alone. Find a way to enjoy it. And for those of you who already enjoy it, you already know. You already know what it is. So I appreciate you guys. I look forward to reading your comments. And we'll talk again very, 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 very soon, okay? Bye.